Ustrascha satamam Gaur ajo maisha Krishna Sukaro gavayoruru Dvishapaha pashavasche me Avir ustrascha satamam Gaurajo Mahisha Krishna Sukaro Gavayoruru Dvishapaha Pasavasche Avirustrasya Satamam. Anyone else? Okay. Transliteration, please repeat after me. Gawa, the cow. Ajaha, the goat. Mahisha, the buffalo. Krishna, a kind of stag. Sukara, hog. Gavayaha, a species of animal. Ruruhu, deer. Dvishapaha, having two hooves. Pashavaha, animals. Cha, also. Ime, all these. Avihi, lamb. Ustra, camel. Cha, and. Satama, O purest. Translation, please repeat after me. O purest Vidura, of the lower animals of cow, goat, buffalo, Krishna stag, hog, Gavaya animal, deer, lamb, and camel, all have two hooves. Okay. There's no purport for this verse, so we'll just read the next few verses. Karo ashva shatavaro gauram sharabis chamari tata ete chaika shapta shata shunu panchanakam pashum. The horse, mule, ass, gaura, shraba, bison, and wild cow all have only one hoof. Now you may hear from me about the animals who have 5 nails. Shva sharghalo vrikho vyagro majara shasha shalakho simho kapir gaja kurmo gadacha makaradayaha. Shva, the dog, jackal, tiger, fox, cat, rabbit, sajaru, lion, monkey, elephant, tortoise, alligator, gosapa, etc. all have 5 nails in their claws. They are known as panchanakas, or animals having 5 nails. Text 25. Kanaka gradara bhaka shena basa baluka barina hamsa sarasa chakrava kakulu kadaya kagaha. The heron, vulture, crane, hawk, basa, baluka, peacock, swan, sarasa, chakravaka, crow, owl, and others are the birds. Text 26. Arvak shotrastu navamaha shatareka vidonunam rajo adika karma para dukhecha sukha maninam. The creation of human beings who are one species only and who stock their eatables in the belly is the ninth in the rotation. In the human race, the mode of passion is very prominent. Humans are always busy in the midst of miserable life, but they think themselves happy in all respects. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. The human being is more passionate than the animals, and thus the sex life of human being is more irregular. The animals have their due time for sexual intercourse, but the human beings has no regular time for such activities. The human being is endowed with a higher, advanced stage of consciousness for begetting relief from the existence of material miseries. But due to his ignorance, he thinks that his higher consciousness is meant for advancing in the material comforts of life. Thus, his intelligence is misused in the animal propensities, eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Instead of spiritual propensities, eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, instead of spiritual realization. By advancing in material comforts, the human being puts himself into a more miserable condition. But illusioned by the material energy, he always thinks himself happy even while in the midst of misery. Such misery of human life is distinct from the natural comfortable life enjoyed even by the animals. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakya Shakshur Unmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Kamalam Shri Gurun Shri Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nivisesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Teshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaham Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratuse Namah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisance unto him. The tradition is when Bhagavatam is spoken, if the altar opens or not, you don't pay obeisances. So you're listening to Bhagavatam. The only exception is when your spiritual master walks in. Similar when eating prasadam. Only when the spiritual master walks in, you pay obeisances, otherwise you don't pay obeisances for anything else. Anyway, side note. Nice verses. If somebody wants to learn Sanskrit, when you learn alphabets, you always equate it to some animal which you can recognize. A for elephant, whatever, A for what, something, albatross. Similarly, here there is a description of a lot of animals which are quite familiar to us, so we can memorize the respective Sanskrit words, like we all know go means cow, Mahisha means buffalo. And one of the names of Durga is Mahishasuramardini. She killed a demon who took a form of a buffalo. So her name is Mahishasuramardini. So Mahisha. Sukra means hog. Ushta means camel. So description of a lot of animals here. Then there's a description of low animals, which are cows, goats, buffaloes, some herbivorous animals, finishing with camel, and they have 2 hooves. And then comes horses, mules, ass, gaura, I don't know what gaura is, shraba, bison, and wild cows, which is nilgav, all have 1 hoof. And then this description of animals which have claws. There are dogs, jackals, tiger, fox, cat, rabbit, lion, monkey, elephant, tortoise, alligators, gosapa, I don't know what it is, gosapa. All have 5 nails in their claws. And 5 nails. What is that? I think in Niti Shastra, Chanakya Pandit says, text 15, chapter 1, one must be very careful with a river and dealing with a river, dealing with animals with 5 claws, beasts with claws and horns, and women, don't tell them. And the last one is somebody who is related to the royal family. So one has to be careful dealing with these individuals, because here the discussion is about panchanakas, or animals with claws and horns, because you never know how they will react dealing with any of these animals. Same thing with animals with hooves, horns. You never know how they deal with. They can accidentally poke you and pierce you. People who have cats, they can understand. Cats are always scratching you. People come to work with a scratch in their face. Or it's a cat person. So one has to be careful with animals which have claws and horns. You never take them for granted. You never get too familiar with them. You always, it doesn't matter, you might have a cow all your life in your house, and you kind of grew up with a cow, but still you'll always be cautious with the cow because it has horns. And same thing goes to river and other things I mentioned, because you never know. The river, when I used to live in Mayapur, every year you hear somebody drowned. And just because river is murky, it flows very fast. There's upper current, lower current, and there's whirlpools. Ocean is simple, just takes you in and throws you back. But rivers, there's so much things happening. When you get dragged into the river, you don't know if you're swimming up or down because it's all murky. You can't see. So one has to be very careful with the river. And also rivers have currents. Suddenly the current might increase. You might see shallow, there could be rain in the catchment areas, which you don't know. And suddenly there'll be a shift current, so it can take you away. So Chanakya Pandit says one should be very careful dealing with these entities. Other entities, I don't want to talk about it because it's not related here. And then there's description of nice birds, peacock, hawks, cranes, and chakravakas, crows and owls. And the 9th creation is human beings. So there are 8,400,000 species of creation within this material world. Out of this 8,400,000, 400,000 species are human beings. And these human beings, there are many types of human beings. We can say types, or many standards or classes of human beings. Some are, live in other planetary systems, or even the same planetary system, but in different varshas. Like you have Kimpurusha Varsha, or you have Hari Varsha, and there are many varshas there, where there are Yakshas, Gandharvas, and Kimpurushas, Vanaras, and these are all different classes of human beings. And similarly, in lower planetary systems, there are other human beings. And in the system where we live in, or where we have access, we can see various tribes. There's cultured men, uncultured. There's people still live in the forest. Like you go to the island near Andaman, they haven't seen human beings, or never dealt with the so-called modern human beings, so they don't know how to deal with them. Similarly, when the civilized men when came to Australia, they were Aborigines living here, and they never dealt with the Western world. So there's different classes of human beings, and all these classes of human beings comprises the 400,000 species of human beings, and they're all same. I saw an ad yesterday for skin cancer. The sun doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're black, white. Sun gives overexposure to sun gives you skin cancer. Similarly, this 400,000 species, they're all human beings, and they all have similar constitution. They are affected by similar constitution. According to Bhagavatam, the one thing which is predominant in human race is the mode of passion. Well, every living being taking birth in this material world is made of mode of ignorance. And that is the predominating quantity or predominating guna. They're all in mode of ignorance. And some living entities might have say for example, like you take example of a cake. Cake is made up of flour, sugar, and ghee or butter. So that's the foundation of cake. So every living entity who takes birth is made of mode of ignorance, like a cake. These three things are the substantial layer. And on top of it, the icing could differ. Some might have an icing of goodness. Some might have the icing of passion. And some might have icing of ignorance. Similarly, some cake have icing of banana, you call it as a banana cake. Some might have icing of strawberry, you call it a strawberry cake. So, depending on the icing you have, there are different species of life. When the icing is made of goodness, the entities like cows, they are in mode of goodness, peaceful animals. Swans, they are in mode of goodness. But the layers are all ignorance. Similarly, as human beings, the substantial layer is ignorance. We are all ignorant. We are on the mode of ignorance. And we all have the icing of passion. Now, when you have icing of passion, to a certain limited quantity, then you are a human being. If the passion is too much, then you become, if the icing is too much of passion and too much ignorance, you become like tiger and some carnivorous animals. But generally, human beings, the icing is passion. So, what this passion does? So, passion directly proportionate to sex life. So when you're passionate, naturally, the more you're passionate, the more you want to indulge in sex life. Does that make sense? Directly proportionate. So, us human beings are naturally afflicted by sexual desire. That is the driving force within the human form of life. And this sex life directly proportionates to creation or material comforts, building skyscrapers, building huge cities, facilities for sense enjoyment, stadiums, sporting facilities, and all areas for enjoyment. So passion proportionates to sex desire, and sex desire proportionates to all this creative activity. Of course, if there is no sex desire, men won't get up. And if they couldn't be bothered getting up to go to work, why bother? So just because of the sex desire is present, human beings create. They go and conquer different countries and modernize it, build industries and roads and planes and all those things, because it's all derived from mode of passion through the medium of sex. But again, the icing is passion. It has the impetus to create and generate and things like that. But also in the human form of life, there is an element of intelligence provided. And through those, using the intelligence, when we say intelligence, it's not the intelligence that, you become a computer engineer or you become an expert, whatever in material field. That is not intelligence according to Vedic standards. That's considered shilpa. Shilpa means art. So when we refer to intelligence, it's intelligence which elevates one from the icing of passion to the icing of goodness. That's called intelligence. When scripture says women are not intelligent, they're not referring to the art, the Shilpa Shastra, because they could be expert in Shilpa Shastra. But the intelligence is referred in Vedic standards generally is the intelligence which elevates a person, a human being, from the mode of passion to mode of goodness. So that's an opportunity available only in human form of life. And in all the previous 8 creations we saw, that intelligence is not available. The intelligence is pretty much dominant within the first 2 koshas. The 5 koshas? It's limited to the first 2 koshas, the Annamaya kosha or the Pranamaya kosha. There's no Manamaya kosha in them. There's no mind in them. Annamaya kosha means, Taittiriya Upanishad talks about it. In that state, and kosha means state or state, let's give it a state. In that state, a living entity is concerned only about food. Food is God, pretty much. What is that? Annam iti Brahma, Annam iti Brahma or something. Annam Brahma iti Jiva, Jiva iti or something like that. Taittiriya Upanishad goes. So they are thinking about only food. So in the previous 8 creations, generally animal, they're just thinking about food mostly. They live to eat. Well, there are some human beings who live to eat, but we'll come to that. But generally, animals, they live to eat, and their reproduction and sleeping and defending, that's all done naturally in a very controlled way. For example, animals, they mate only in certain season. Like if you go to the farm in early summer, late spring, there are a lot of peachooks, what do you call peachooks? Little chooks running around, because their season of mating is early spring. In early spring, you go there, the peacock is the male peacock is always dancing around, showing off, because that's the season. The peacock won't mate even if you force it in winter or in autumn. It mates only in a particular season. Even sexually very high active animal like a rabbit, it produces Every fortnight or every month it reproduces. But again, it has a cycle. Within the short term, it has a cycle. But human beings, and the exception is monkeys, their sexual desire is always high. They're always high. So, going back to the state of mind is present. So there's choice. As soon as mind is introduced, there's choice. We are choosing between good and bad, which is good for me, which is bad for me, the Mano platform. But again, even entering the Mano platform, even though they might have a physical human body, even though they're part of the 400,000 human species, but according to Vedic standards, maybe anthropological standards, they may be considered humans. The Vedic standard is, unless that entity is interested in Aphavarga, it is not considered human being, even though it has a human body. We'll come to what is Aphavarga. Let's just have a bookmark there. So even though it has, entity have a human body, but if it leads a life of uncontrolled sex, uncontrolled sexual, sensual indulgence, of overeating, I was mentioning before, there are people who live to eat. Their whole thing is about eating. They give reviews about food. The modern day vegans, their whole consciousness is all about food. Master chef and not so master chef. So it's all about food, food, food. It's still Annamaya platform. No different from a camel, who's thinking about food and water. Yeah. Even though you have a human body, you still, even though you belong to a human species according to Vedic standards, you're not qualified as a human being. And the same thing like, let's talk about how I finished the Panchakoshas? No. There's Pranamaya, then the Manamaya, where the mind gives you choice to choose good or bad for your senses, for your sense gratification, then that's Manamaya. And there is Vijnanamoy. Vijnanamoy, you actually enter to the human standard according to the Vedas, where you're using your higher intelligence and saying, look, I'm also eating, a dog is also eating. I'm also, sleeping, the dog is also sleeping. What's the difference? That's where the Vijnanamoy, the intelligence is touched. And from those, by being in Vijnanamoy, you can elevate yourself to happiness, which is Anandamoy. Here, even the purport says, if the intelligence is misused, you are basically in the lower modes, which is the Mana mode or the Prana mode, or in the Annamoy platforms. So the intelligence is misused, so you are more or less like an animal. What is that? Pashu Gokara. What is that verse? Something Gokara. Saeva Gokara. Just not better than an animal. As Prabhupada says, cow or an ass or a Gokara means a cow. There's no much difference, even though you're walking in two legs. But if you elevate your consciousness from Vijnanamoy to Anandamoy through Aphavarga Atmani, by the process of elevating one's consciousness towards liberation or towards Krishna, then naturally it leads you to happiness. And in that state, a person actually lives a blissful life. Until that time, as described here, the intelligence is misused and lives in the animal propensities of eating, mating, defending, and sleeping, which are a miserable condition of life. Doesn't matter how sophisticated two-legged walking animal, human animal, is, but unless if the person is in apavarga process, he is in miserable condition of life. You can see that in 5th canto of Bhagavatam, where Jarabharat gives the analogy of a merchant entering the forest. So the soul, the analogy goes like the soul, interested to enjoy, have entered this material world, which is a forest, bhavambudhi, and it's trying to enjoy. But every step is misery. So he gives various examples. The merchant goes, he's lost in the forest, it's dark in the night, and it's been threatened by wild animals, and he correlates to various human interactions we have in our day-to-day life, try to enjoy the material world. And all it leads to is misery. So every verse he says, he does this and this and this, and because of that, the end result is become miserable. He looks at a nice woman, he wants to enjoy it, but the woman's husband or the woman's father or the woman's brothers are protecting her. He can't reach her, so he becomes miserable. He's surrounded by envious people, and they're always talking bad about him. It's like mosquitoes and flies biting him. It's quite annoying and painful. Because of that, he becomes miserable. So a person who, with a desire, entered into this material world in the mode of passion, trying to enjoy, the end result is always misery. So if you're working in the non-apavarga, which is double negative. So Prabhupada gives this example a lot. In Sanskrit alphabets, I think most of the Indian alphabets, I guess even in Tamil, I think it's same alphabets. There's Ka Varga and Kana, Kaka, Ga, then Cha Varga, Ta Varga, and Pa Varga. Pa, Fa, Bha, Ma, Pa Varga. So living in this material world is like the Pa Varga. Pa Varga alphabets denote Pa for Parishram. Parishram means hard work. So in this world, nothing comes easy. Everything you have to work very hard. Everything is parishram. Like, you want to secure a job in some field. You have to start when you're a 4-year-old for that. Start carrying 10 kilos of books to school, and then give up your parents for 8 to 10 hours, and you're in an alien place with a bunch of people who you don't know in a very tender age, and you work hard, and then you come to year 12. You guys studied here? Anybody who studied here? You studied here? I don't know how difficult it is. Back home it is quite, I studied in India, it's quite difficult. Then you come to year 12, then you have to study more, and then you have to write an entrance exam, then study more, then you have to pursue a career like medicine or whatever, law, then you have to study more. Like people, I know I have few doctor friends who studied here, and they said they lived on coffee for the whole 5 years of studies. It's just minimal sleep, so you have to just keep on drinking coffee. And just it doesn't finish there, you study, at least in India you study, then you're a doctor. Here you study 5 years, you're still not really gone practice, then you have to go and be a registrar, and to be a registrar you get pretty much humiliated by everyone and everybody. People kill themselves. This is happening here in this country apparently. All the women go through, they're all getting abused sexually during those stages. It's very common apparently. Because I'm giving a doctor example because all Indians here, and all of your parents told you should become doctor when you're born. So we all failed according to our parents' standard. So, but the other flip side of it is to go through that, it's parishram. You're always working hard. And then by working hard, the next what is that? Pa, Fa. The next letter comes, which is Fa. Fa means Feni, I think. Feni. Feni means foam. Kind of loosely same word. Foam. Working hard and you're foaming like a donkey. You can see that in India, where they have bullock carts or donkeys or camels carrying huge load. And when they're carrying huge load, you can see them foaming in their mouth because of the heavy weight. Similarly, human beings, working very hard, we are foaming like animals. And then the next is Pa, Fa, Ba. Ba with not Tivra Ba, just a regular Ba. Ba means Bhayantra, I think. It means bewilderment. Bewilderment. In spite of working hard, you just don't know, you're always bewildered. You don't know to turn right or left. Every few years you're in a position where you don't know which direction to go. Like Prabhupada gives an example when he got out of Boston the first time. When he got up the steps from the Jaladuta, he didn't know to go left or right. It's completely alien. Similarly, we live in a situation where, we're all educated, a couple of degrees and worked it all out, but still, every few years, you come to a situation where you don't know which direction to go. Same thing, you're a brahmachari, thinking, should I get married or should I not get married? You're grahastha, do I be here or just run for the hills? You're always you're always bewildered, you don't know which direction to go, you're always confused. And the fourth, the Ba with Tivrama, is Bhaya. So because of this bewilderment, you're always scared, you're always afraid. Because if I do this, I'm going to invest some of my time and energy, and I may not be able to, may be able to successful, may not be able to successful. There's always this fear. And the fear never goes away, it's always there. And eventually, and the last one is Ma. Ma stands for? Anybody? Mrityu, death. After all this fear and being bewildered, working hard like a donkey, end of the day you're dead. So that is the Bhavarga, where born in the human species of life, not interested in spiritual life, but solely interested in material life. This is the consequence. So that's why Rishabhadev, Nanam Deha Deha Bhaja, that verse, where he instructs his 10,000 sons headed by Bharat Maharaj, human form of life is not meant for working hard like dogs and hogs. It's meant for performing austerity towards, with the goal of spiritual enlightenment, Bhavarga. Otherwise, you're just a regular animal. There's no difference between a regular animal. So, the human form of life, we got, according to this verse, has predominant mode, which is passion. And being aware of that, one has to consciously elevate himself from the icing of passion to icing of goodness. And through the when you elevate yourself to icing of goodness, all your senses get illuminated. According to Bhagavad Gita, all the 9 senses gets illuminated. So through illumination of the senses, you can see things as it is. And you can see the material world is temporary. The enjoyment, what you hear, get is temporary. It's predominantly misery. And you go towards spiritual upliftment, which is from mode of goodness to transcendental mode of goodness, which is Anandamaya platform. So that's the goal of human life. And how one goes through that is, again, the examples given where when Brahma was born, Krishna instructs him to perform austerities. Similarly, Rishabhadev instructs his sons to perform austerities. So how one elevates oneself from passion to goodness is through performing austerities. What is performing austerities? Well, in simple sense, having a regulated life. Having a regulated life. Getting up in the morning, having a shower, try to come to Mangalarati, chant your rounds, a regulated number of rounds, and eat a regulated amount of food, have regulated sex, have regulated sleep. By having all this regulated, one gradually removes the icing of passion and coats with mode of goodness. And the mode of goodness, keep practicing it through, what is that, the next verse after Rishabhadev says, Mahad Dwaram? Mahad Sangha Seva Dwaram, yeah. By serving the Mahajanas, by following the footsteps of the Mahajanas, the Acharyas, and the Dwaram for eternal happiness becomes available for people who are born like cats and dogs. So that is the process. So we can move on from that. So here we can see Maitreya Rishi is going into very detail about all this, various aspects of creation, all these species of animals. He's describing them, animals with hooves, animals with two hooves, and the material creation, the planetary systems, and all this, the descriptions. In fifth canto, the description goes even deeper. It goes into different varshas, different planetary systems, the distance between them, all the way to Brahmaloka. One might ask, why is these descriptions there in Bhagavatam? Why? My understanding is a couple of things. One, here the topic of Bhagavatam it's about knowing Krishna. This book helps us to gradually know Krishna better. Krishna is not an ordinary person. He is a supreme personality of Godhead. We say that Krishna is supreme. Krishna is supreme, but we, born in the ignorance, we really don't know what does that means. We just do something called a lip service. I'll come to that. And the other one is also, we are trying to understand this person, trying to develop a loving relationship with this person. So we want to know about this person. What are his achievements? What has he done? How Islam says God is great, but Prabhupada says they don't know how great is God. Bhagavatam describes how great is God. So we are trying to understand this person. So description of all these detailed things, kind of puts in a perspective, what are these achievements of this person? What are the facets of this person? How grateful this person is. So one can appreciate this person and more. Now one can love a person more if you know how chivalrous he is. Name a very chivalrous king. Anybody knows any chivalrous king? Alexander. Alexander conquered most of the known world when he was 16. He led an army from northern Mesopotamia, not Mesopotamia, what is it? Northern, what is that place? Northern Greek, what is that? Not Mesopotamia. Even the country exists now. Starts with M. Macedonia, thank you. Northern Macedonia, from all the way to northern Macedonia, which is the Baltic. Is it Baltic? No. I don't know. Eastern Europe, northern Eastern Europe, all the way to Greece, Turkey, Iraq, Those days, Sumer, they were all very big civilizations, very strong emperors there. Persia, Afghanistan, all the Pakistan, Sindh, all the way. So he conquered, Egypt, all this major part of the known world. And in those days, they didn't know Australia or America existed. So this is the major part of the known world. And west of that, it was considered barbarians. That's why King Heldrain even built a wall in England. Not of that, of barbarians, don't want to deal with them. So the civilized world, according to Alexander, most of the civilized world he conquered when he was 16 years old. And 16-year-old, our mother is still washing our clothes. And this man led an army. To make sense? Imagine leading an army. They could be mutiny, and there's a lot of wells, and you have to keep them all on track. Have to keep going. No food. Maybe you guys, Sankirtan boys, you would know. You're going out after 2 weeks. You're thinking, maybe I should just go back to the ashram. I've been there already on the road for 2 weeks. I don't know, whatever your buffer is. You start thinking, I just need some good food now. I've done it. But this man, controlled an army of adults when he was 16. So, by knowing those things, facets of, then you can see Alexander is great. You say Alexander is great. You don't know how great unless you kind of dig deep slightly and say, oh my goodness. He defeated the Persian Empire, which was very strong. He entered Sindh and he defeated, I think it was King Pari? Puri or Pari? Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually wrote a novel on that. He defeated that king in Sindh, who had elephants, and they had never seen elephants in their life before. So, 16-year-old boy leading an army defeats. So by knowing that, you can appreciate how great this guy is. To give a gist. Similarly, we say Krishna, you always say Radha Gopinath, and you kind of do lip service. I'm sure you're not doing it, I'm doing it. But we actually don't know how great this person is. The awe and reverence. If a prime minister walks in, everybody will get up and start running around. And our prime minister is a buffoon. Here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he created millions of universes, and Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Characharam Hetunana Kaunteya Jagat Vipravartate, both movable and unmovable world all manifest from him, from me, and I maintain them all. What is that? Like a pearl, what is this? String, Sutre Manigana Iva. I'm holding them all as like a pearl. So by reading this fifth canto or description by Maitreya, you slowly start appreciating how wonderful this person is. He's not, Krishna, some, just take it easy, lip service. No, this person is inconceivably amazing. And his paraphernalias are inconceivably amazing. So it lets us appreciate the Lord in his true form. And in spite of being that grandiose, which we can't even explain, he is making himself available for us. So the other flip side is to prevent us from becoming sahajiyas. Not, by knowing all those things, I hear Matajis calling themselves gopis. What the hell, you're not gopis. There's no gopis here. These are Krishna's personal associates. So, the other flip side is to prevent us from becoming sahajiyas. Sahaja means somebody who takes things for cheap. Krishna is opening himself, and then we might start not appreciating and dealing with him as if you're dealing with, your friends and family without knowing, appreciating his value. Then that becomes Sahajaism. Yeah. So one has to be very careful to prevent that from happening, where Krishna further and further he starts going to start revealing himself. So he's putting himself in a much more vulnerable situation where we don't know how to respect anybody. We are always thinking about ourselves. Especially at least if there is varnashram, there is people respect based on all right. I was born here. I'll just do it out of duty and care, and they respect. Even your grandfather might be a complete idiot, but you still pay respect. Your father might be a complete. But because you're born in varnashram, there's this training where you respect. And it's there. Doesn't matter. Here now the kids, they call their father stupid. Dad, shut up, you don't know anything. Even your own father. What to speak of Krishna? So from us preventing from becoming sahajas, what is that? Familiarity becomes something, content. So we don't want to go into prevent us from becoming familiar with the Lord who can't be described. Fifth canto, Sukadeva Goswami says, when Parikshit Maharaj asked him, can you describe how the material world? He says, look, it's very hard, I don't know, I will just give it a try, and what I'm trying to explain is very limited to my intelligence. This is Sukadeva Goswami saying about the creation of the Lord. And this material creation is Tripad Vibhuti. Only the 1/3 of the Lord. In Purusha Sukta, it's Tripad Vibhuti, the verse goes. So, even to understand that 1/3, we don't have the intelligence. But, out of our ignorance, we start talking to Krishna as if he's your neighbor or something. So, that becomes Sahajaism. So, to prevent that from happening, all these descriptions are given in such a detailed way, so we grow the respect, the awe and reverence before we jump into becoming gopis. No, we're not gopis. You're jackasses, according to Prabhupada says. Asses and camels, that's what we are. Not gopis. So to prevent that from happening, all these descriptions are given. So that's my understanding of these descriptions. So I will stop here, and we have 5 more minutes. If you have any questions or comments or criticisms, fire away.
Why do we put on this planet, and for what purpose?
Why do you...
What purpose are we put on this planet?
Well, it's simple. Why do we come to this planet? Why do we come to the planet? Because we wanted to. We wanted to come here. We want to enjoy. Say, for example, your father is a rich man. He's very active. He has a big family. He controls everything. He makes all the money. He gives you all the money to enjoy. You're in his house. Then you start asking your father, Father, I don't want to be under you. You're the one calling the shots. I want to call the shots myself. And the father says, look, this is my house. You can't call the shots here. If you want to call the shots, I'll build you a house. I'll give you a wife. You go and try to call the shots with your wife. And the wife tells you to whatever. Okay. So, that's why we are here. Does that make sense? We want to call the shots. We want to be in the position of our father. Same thing here. Krishna is the father. He is the supreme enjoyer. And we at one point decided, look, you're doing good for yourself. I want to do it for myself. Help me out. And Krishna says, sure. Here's the material world. Here's all the opulences. Go and call the shots.
Just one question. Krishna, how do we know? I said this question last time, but I've got a bit of a vague answer. Maybe you can clarify it for me. How do we know that Krishna exists? How do we know? Just in a few words.
Okay. Simple, very simple. Very simple. Do you have a father?
Yes.
Does he exist?
Yes.
How do you know?
Because I see him.
You see him. Before you, how do you know he's your father?
I just know.
How do you know? Your mother told you.
Yeah, that's true.
If your mother doesn't tell you, or if your mother says, this guy is the father, he is the father. Otherwise, you have to do a DNA test. There is, 6 billion people on the planet, so you divide by 3. The 3 billion DNAs you have to compare to come to the conclusion. So in that instance, your mother is the authority. In that instance, your mother is the authority. She is the supreme authority in defining who is your father. Similarly, the Shastras is the authority to define who is God, how he is God, why he exists. In Shastras like Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, the scriptures are called mother, like mother. So scriptures tells you who your father is, who your spiritual father is. What is that? Bija, what is that? Aham bija pradapita. So in Bhagavad Gita it says Krishna is the seed-giving father. Krishna is, Bhagavad Gita says. And Bhagavad Gita is accepted by all the intellectuals. Even modern day intellectuals like Einstein, they accept Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita, it's clearly said, Krishna is your father. Krishna is your father. So you asked a simple answer. The simple answer is, you follow the authority. And you choose the right authority, and the authority is, Shastra is the authority. And Shastra says, I'm the seed-giving father. Case solved. Simple? Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Yeah.
Just regarding the Prahlad and Prahlad, as we were going through the different things, like from now, working hard, being good. But even, I was thinking that even those who are on upper Varga, those who are spiritual, don't they also work hard like those?
It's not supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be like that.